Hi there everyone. Welcome to another end-user tutorial video. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about page check. When I talk about page check, I'm referring to the 4 buttons that appear when you click the Publish button for a page. These 4 checks available are spelling, links, W3C validation, and accessibility, and they're all extremely useful tests to run when you want to make sure that your page is in tip-top shape. We talked about these checks a little bit in our publishing content video, but I would be remiss if I didn't devote a video to this feature by itself. Some of what you see here may be a review if you've watched the publishing content video. Let's go to a page in my site and see how things go. Now you might remember that the page check buttons appear when I click the Publish button, but I don't have to do that. There's another icon that I can click to run page check at any time. Up in the Page Actions toolbar, there's a checkmark icon that will appear as soon as I check out the page. Clicking on this icon will bring up page check, which in turn shows me those familiar 4 buttons, or fewer if your administrator has turned some of them off. For posterity, let's review what each page check does. Spelling will check the content of my page for any misspelled words. If it finds any, it will list them in the report, and you can add any of those words to the custom dictionary if you've been given that permission. So let's run a spell check on this page and see what we get. Now it looks like there's 2 errors on this page. One of them is just the last name of our transfer coordinator, so I'll go ahead and add his name to the dictionary. But another one is actually misspelled. In order to fix that, I'll actually need to go back into the editable region and edit the word. So let's do just that right now. I'll close out this report here. I'll travel to my editable region. I'll find that word, replace it. Then once that's done, I'll save. And there we go. So let me click on the page check icon once again and run a spell check. And just as I expected, now there are no errors. Now, let's go on to link check. Running this check allows you to make sure the links on your page are all valid and working correctly. This will check all links, internal and external. After running this test, we can see that I have just 1 broken link here on my page. When I click on the View Report, it'll give me a list of all the links on my page, including the ones that are working correctly. I can see that it looks like I linked to a page on my site that no longer exists, which is why that particular link gives me a status code of 404 here. To fix this, I'll close out of this report, take a look at my page, and identify where that broken link is located. Since we saw that the broken link was titled Undergraduate Requirements, we can probably assume that the Undergraduate Requirements link is the one that's actually broken. I'll go into my main editable region again, and this time I'll change the link to the index page. Perhaps I know that this information is now on the index page, which is why the original page has been deleted. Alright, so I've fixed my link and adjusted that paragraph, so now we're ready to move on. I'll click page check again and run my link check and ensure that there aren't any other broken links on the page. Okay, awesome. Now let's talk about W3C validation and accessibility. While the issues in spelling and links are pretty easy to modify on your own, the issues presented in the other 2 checks usually involve adjusting the source code of the page to fix. For this reason, you may not see these 2 checks when you have page check open because your administrator has disabled them, or if they're still visible, you may not be able to fix the issues presented by them if you don't have source code access or you're not a web developer. With this in mind, I'll quickly show you what the checks look like, but we won't be editing source code or anything in this video to resolve any issues. The W3C validation checks your code against standards set forth by the W3C, which is the governing body of the web, and the group that sets the standards for things like HTML5. Running this check, we'll see if anything in my source code doesn't conform to those standards. As we can see, it looks like this page is good to go. Typically, the source code that OU Campus has generated for your pages will always be valid according to those standards. Just in case you do find errors, here's an example of what the report looks like when you expand it. Alright, let's move on to our final check, accessibility. This one is similar to the validation one in that it's scanning the source code of your page. Instead of looking for valid code according to web standards, this one checks the page against accessibility standards, such as the ones set forth in Section 508 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. If I have errors with this check, as we have here, they'll be sorted into 3 categories. Known problems, which are things that are definitely causing accessibility issues on my page right now. Likely problems, which contain things that are very possibly causing issues, but cannot be verified, so a user in the system would have to review it. And finally, potential problems that are very similar to likely problems and just contain warnings that certain practices may cause accessibility errors if used improperly. These would also need to be reviewed by a user. Viewing the report puts those 3 types of problems on their own separate tabs, and each problem is explained in more detail along with a link to a page that describes how to fix it. So, now at this point you know all about page check. Closing out of the accessibility check, we can see that from the page check dialog box, you can adjust the spell check language and run all 4 reports at once instead of having to click on them manually. As we covered during the publishing content video, all of these features are also available in the Publish dialog box, so you can remember to run them before publishing your page. I also mentioned in that video that you might see these checks, or at least some of them, run automatically when you click the Publish button. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so let's say that my administrator has turned on Final Check for my site, meaning that some page checks are going to run automatically when I click the Publish button. We can see here that clicking the Publish button triggers the spelling and links checks to run automatically now. I can't publish the page until the check's finished at the very least. If I wanted to run the other checks, I can still do so by clicking their icons. There's also a feature that can prevent me from publishing the page if any of those automatically running checks return any errors. See how I have a spelling error and a link error in those checks, and my Publish button is still not clickable? It looks like we're forced to fix these problems before we can publish our page. I'll look at the spelling and links reports first, just to see what the issues are, and then I'll go ahead and fix them. So just give me a little bit of time while I go ahead and do that right now. Alrighty. So once they're fixed, I can go ahead and click Publish again. Spelling and links will run just as we had before, but this time we should get a nice little No Errors Found message, and then my Publish button will be clickable and I can publish the page out. So there we have it. You're now familiar with the pieces that make up Page Check, and we've taken a look at Final Check and how it affects the publishing of pages. Page check is very important when it comes to making sure the content on your pages is as good as possible, so make sure that you're running these often, even if they're not set to run automatically. Thanks for watching.